Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Forgive me if my voice is a little bit croaky. I'm getting over a little bit of an illness spell, but aside from that, I'm in good health, so don't worry about that. But anyways, I just saw the remake of Nosferatu 2024 just a few hours ago, and I wanted to do a mini little quickie review on it. Now, there might be spoilers in this. I mean, it's hard to say because it kept pretty close to the original, so if you're concerned about plot points, then this shouldn't be a bad video to watch. It's more going to be going over certain themes, a few little moments, aesthetic choices, and all that, but all that being said, do consider this as a spoiler review. And before I even go over my thoughts, I did want to go over my background with Nosferatu. So firstly, I saw the original film when I was going through, again, I mentioned this on my channel before, my 2021 to 2022 depression, or as the movie would call it, my melancholy. So this movie, along with the Universal Monsters as well, became very important to me. I really do love those films. And I have also watched The Witch, which is another one of Robert Eggers' great movies. So that movie I respect a lot. I really enjoy Nosferatu as well. You take Nosferatu, you take Eggers, you put them together, you got a good thing going on. Jumping ahead to literally yesterday, I also rewatched the original Nosferatu, the free version that's on YouTube. Didn't love the score as much as the one that I have on DVD, but it was fine. It's mostly the same stuff. Then I watched Dead Meat's video, kind of recapping Nosferatu 1922. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. Some good trivia in there. Then today I saw the new movie from 2024. We're in 2025 now. Happy New Year to you all. And then I had a brief discussion with my friend for Shorter Films through Discord. So that helps me to put a few notes together over here. If you want to check out our channel, I'll put a link below. But anyways, with all that being said, I've arranged all my general thoughts. Probably not everything. I'm sure there's a few little things I'm missing. But my final verdict on the movie is overall very good. I do think it was not without its problems, though it definitely had some strengths, though it was missing a few things, though there are some new things that I did were really, really good. So it was a mixed bag, but overall, it's a movie worth seeing. I really did enjoy it, and I do recommend that you see it if you haven't yet. So let's go over the pros of this movie. In no particular order, I got some pros, I got some cons, and I use those terms loosely because you can't really compare a modern remake to an original movie, let alone one that is over 100 years old, so it's a little tricky there. So it's kind of hard to say that one thing is very good or one thing is really bad in comparison or contrasting nature from the original movie, but these are just the things that I noticed. Firstly, performances. Spot on. I really love the acting. A lot of old and new faces. I've never seen Lily Rose Depp in anything. This might have been her acting debut for all I know, but she was spot on. Then he had some returning actors. I think one dude from the Conjuring series, a series which I don't like, but he did a good job here. Bill Skarsgård, I mean, he's a jack of all trades. We're starting to realize that now. I was actually initially a little concerned because everyone knows him best now as the It guy. He was Pennywise the Clown in the, 2017 iteration of It, if I'm not mistaken. And he did great there as well, but I was a little worried that too much of the Pennywise-ness would seep into the new movie here. But no, he totally different character, and he did a very good job training up to be this whole new creature, which is great. I actually learned from a friend who I just talked to that he actually went to an opera singer to channel that new Orlockian voice in this film, and it really had this distinct boom to it that was very good. And with all that being said, we can segue into, I guess, just some general little smatterings of little quick things. So, like, the music was fantastic, really built around the suspense, the slow builds, the slow burns. This movie was more than anything an art piece. I mean, plot-wise, it had some weird stuff going on, but I feel like between the music, the sound design, the camera work, it is something that is really beautiful and chilling to watch at the same time. I think it did an excellent job at that all the way around. There was hardly a dull moment in those departments. Also, another thing worth mentioning, it's a period piece. I mean, of course it is. It takes place in, like, 1850s Germany, maybe a little bit earlier than that, maybe a hair later, but they did a very good job with the wardrobe, the settings, the really disgusting, dilapidated conditions of Germany during that time period. You really felt like you were in a certain point in time watching this movie. And of course, I mean, if you've watched The Witch, as I did, you know that Robert Eggers really has a taste for pinning down a certain dialect or vocabulary, depending on what culture we're talking about. Like in The Witch, we were talking about Puritans, and they were using very, very old English, for example, that was pulled right from the Salem witch trials. Everything down to the way that they were speaking, the way that they looked, the way that they existed in a very lived in environment, it really did put you into this universe in a very good way. So basically, if you like The Witch, you're going to love Nosferatu as well. I almost forgot my favorite pro about this movie, Willem Dafoe's character. Don't remember his name, unfortunately. Again, he's new here. But basically, he's supposed to be a surrogate Van Helsing, more or less. He's kind of the guy who knows what a Nosferatu is, what Count Lorlock's beef is all about, and all that. And I thought he was a very important new character to have. Because in the original movie, I think it's potentially, as much as I love it, it can potentially be alienating towards modern audiences because of, you got the text cards and everything, you gotta do a lot of reading, there's a lot of silence in there. But then you introduce a character like whoever Willem Dafoe is portraying, who is basically that expository machine. I don't mean that in a bad way, but he's the one who knows all the know-how, like Van Helsing did in Dracula. So it was kind of refreshing to have that type of character in the Nosferatu Count Orlok mythos, because we did not get that in the original 1922 film. And I also kind of liked in the third act how it kind of became a manhunt sort of story, where you had several characters. You had Hutter, then you had Ellen, then you had Ellen's two caretakers and their daughters. Then you had this new Willem Dafoe character. And then all of them, or at least those of them who were left by that point in the movie, they're kind of devising a plan on how to take down Orlok, rather than Ellen taking it onto herself to take him down. And honestly, either way is good, I think. I mean, in the original movie, you have one person who's using their own insurgency to defeat Orlok, which is great. But then in this one, you have sort of a team up, you have a little bit of deception in there, and I think that is valuable because you get to go into the mindsets of each of these characters, why it's so important for each of them to defeat Orlok by the end of the film. So no matter which way you go, I think it's good, but it's nice that we got something different, and rather than it just being the same old thing. It's not a color-by-number movie at all, and I really appreciated that. There are homages, there were certain motifs that were brought back, whether it be visually, whether it be in dialogue, but they didn't hit the nail on the head all the time, which was good. Like, for example, there were certain things that they did with shadows, with camera angles, like, the iconic shots of him, like, rising out of the coffin, stepping through the doorway, going up the stairs. Like, they made homages to it, but they didn't mirror it exactly, and I really appreciated that. Now let's move on to the cons about this movie, and I don't want to say cons, it's kind of a blunt word that would imply that these things are bad about the movie. It's more just certain choices that the movie made that me personally I would have changed or have done differently, or maybe the way that I interpreted the original movie informed the Orlok legacy to me in a unique way, which contrasts from what we got in this 2024 remake. So the first thing is, absolutely, you need to watch the original movie to understand this one. I was really hoping that this movie would be kind of a gateway into the world of the Universal monsters. I mean, Orlok's not Universal, but like in that era from 1900s to 1950s, those movies. I was hoping that this movie would be like a wholly continual story that could be very digestible and could tempt people to go back to the original movies and go like, oh, I want to see the original Nosferatu. Oh, I want to check out Dracula, or Creature from the Black Lagoon, Wolfman, Invisible Man, all those. But I think the issue with this movie is, and unfortunately had some plot holes, which existed because the movie expects you to watch the original one to fill them in. Like, I think one of the most important and underplayed parts of the first film is the boat trip that Orlok went on when he had the several coffins filled with the soil, the very special soil that he needs to operate when he travels to Germany. But the issue with the film in this way is that suddenly you're on a boat. and you don't know why. He just happens to be on a boat. They never showed the process of him like single-handedly or telepathically moving those coffins onto the boat. And admittedly, yeah, by modern standards, it would be a little silly to see like a time lapse of Orlok like picking up all those coffins montage style and throwing them on the boat or anything like that. Like, yeah, that's something that could be worked around. But instead, the movie chose to totally avoid it. You don't see the transfer of the coffins, and you don't know why they're on a boat until later on in the film. So I feel like that moment, along with several other moments, were either rushed or they were omitted completely. And as a result of that, you need the original movie to sort of act as a fill in the blanks tool, if you will. My next critique of this movie is actually Orlok himself. Well, first of all, Bill Skarsgård did a really good job. I think it was fantastic for this version of Orlok. But the way that they portrayed him directly contrasts with my understanding of the original Nosferatu. In the original film, they did a really good job at making Orlok different from Dracula, and that Orlok was a feral animal, totally out of touch with the human culture of his time, very animalistic, solely blood focused, no emotion at all. All he wanted to do was consume and eat. That's what made that character so good. That's why one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and one of the most controversial at the same time, is when he went totally ham on a few children and he drank their blood. That's the Orlok that I wish we had throughout this movie. Totally animalistic, feral, disgusting, and they did that. But at the same time, they kind of teetered towards a more emotional, more seductive Orlok, rather than being one of total repulsion. And that's where I don't like this iteration of the character. I feel like if you want a seductive vampire, you want a sexy vampire, or whatever it is that you want from there, an emotional character, then that's when you lean on Interview with a Vampire, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Bela Lugosi's Dracula, whatever. But for Orlok, again, he's supposed to be a totally unique character in that he doesn't have ethical principles. He's solely after blood. He doesn't care how anyone feels. He is solely driven by his hunger. But here, he got irate. He got angry at times. He himself is able to be seduced not by the blood of a woman, but the woman themselves. But that doesn't work for my interpretation of who Orlok is supposed to be. So that didn't quite work for me. But let me know what you think. I mean, nothing wrong with this interpretation, but it just clashes with my original understanding. Another change I did notice from the original one that was made in the new one is that Orlok was working on a clock, more or less. Like, on a few occasions, he said, 3 days left or 2 days left. And I'm like, guy, you're hungry. Why are you setting a time limit? You're overseas. Just go. Start eating people. And he was already eating people. So, like, what was he counting down to? Why would he be counting down at all if he's already an all-powerful being? If he had total intent on consuming Ellen, and he already knew where she was, why didn't he just go for her? I mean, maybe there's details I'm missing here, but if her blood or her body, or again, however you want to interpret Orlok, was so important, why wouldn't he just go? Why does he need a time limit? Why does he need to keep everyone on a Dead Rising style, sense of urgency, where there's a certain amount of time before the bad thing happens? That time during which you can come up with a solution. One of the factors that made the original one work so well is that there was no urgency. Rather, everything was already happening. The plague had already spread. Ellen was almost completely under Orlok's control. Orlok was already overseas. And then Orlok was hell-bent on getting Ellen's blood. So then in the new one, they're adding this sort of time limit. And it was like, he's already here. Why are you stretching this out? So that felt a little odd. I mean, and again, maybe that's so you could create a little more breathing room for Willem Dafoe's character, so he could do a little bit more talking and scheming. And I guess maybe that's an okay sacrifice. just for the sake of creating a new interpretation, but still there needs to be a reason for that time limit. Like, you can add that if you want, but it doesn't correspond with the villain's motives, so it doesn't really work for me. The last con that I have here, again, not really a con, more of a choice, and whether or not you prefer this choice or not, personally, I don't think I do, is the very transgressive nature of this film. There's a lot of gore, there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of intimate moments, if I can put it that way. I'm on YouTube here, so I don't want to go into full detail here. Personally, I never have an issue with that in movies. If I see blood, if I see sex or whatever, I'm just like, all right, here we are. Whatever you want to do, Eggers, go for it. I don't care. When it comes to the story of Orlok, do we need that necessarily? Do we need a bloody mess? Do we need to see vampire dong just hanging out? Are those factors necessary for understanding the feral nature of Orlok, the urgency of the situation, the connection between characters? Yeah, you could put that in a movie if you want, but does it help the movie? Does it help enhance the themes or the characterization? Because especially when those things can simply just be implied. Like, again, going back to the scene where Orlok is drinking the blood of those two children, one of the reasons why I think that works so well is it was silhouetted, and you heard a lot of screaming. You didn't have to see the attack. When you had the children's mother run into that room to see what the heck was going on, then you seemed like drop a small silhouette to the ground. And I think that's perfect. It's suggestive. It gives you an idea of what happened rather than showing you exactly what happened. I think that's what made the original one so strong, is the fact that, I mean, it's probably because they had a lack of resources more than anything, but they couldn't show you everything. And that's why the movie was so effective. You couldn't see the full outstretch of the plague. You didn't see every single one of Orlok's murders. But that's what made him so creepy and scary. He's a force of nature. Like, you don't see illness, right? But you're afraid of it because you know what it can do to you. In 1922's Nosferatu, you don't fear Orlok because of what you see. You fear him because you don't know what he's able to do to you, to Ellen, to Hutter. So when people start to go nuts, when people suddenly start to fall ill, it's not because Orlok is there manifested. He's very sparingly seen in the film, but it's because he has this plague-like hold on Germany. That's what makes him scary. Not because you know what he looks like, not because you've seen him do bad things. It's because of the sudden turning tide that occurs when you know he is present, when no one else knows he's there. So yeah, those are pretty much my notes. I could really keep going in depth. I'm sure I could come up with more talking points if I wanted to. So first of all, before you conclude, do I recommend this movie? Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to absolutely have to handle some gore. You're going to have to handle some nudity. I don't care about that. If it's there, big deal. I'm not particularly excited by it. I'm not particularly disgusted. If it's there in the film, it's there in the film. Whatever. If you can't get past it, then probably best just look up some clips when they hit YouTube one day. Because it's a very well-directed film. It's a great cinematic experience. More than anything, it's an excellent art piece, for sure. So, definite recommend for me. Now, the big question, is it better than 1922? I don't think you can properly answer that question in that phrasing. Because, again, you're talking about a movie that's over 100 years old. Movies weren't even a thing yet. They were a concept. They were something that people were playing around with. It was totally experimental. And Nosferatu just happened to be one of those few little lightning in a bottle cases of it being absolutely perfect. You had Murnau, who might have been an occultist. Well, he was a confirmed occultist of some sort. And he wanted to inject some of that imagery that he knew into the film itself and just see how that worked, while at the same time riffing off of someone else's IP. And it works beautifully. I mean, yeah, there's some things about the movie that haven't lived up to modern standards, but then again, those standards didn't exist at the time. So can we properly, say bad things about that movie? I don't think we can. And then there's the question of, can you say whether the new one was better than the original or not? once again, we got new standards now. We got new technology. We got new resources. I'll bet if we had him now currently and he was still alive and he had all this tech and all and color, for example, that we got now, it would be a totally different movie, right? So then I guess the last question would be, which one do I prefer to watch personally as a viewer? 1922, easily. This new movie, it's more of a sit down. It's more of a slow drum roll. Which is fine. It's good and all, but it's not something that I'm like, oh, I gotta rewatch this tomorrow. There's so much to take in. It's more like, wow, that was cool. That was really neat interpretation. But I'm not like dying to see it again soon. Like, I'd love to watch it again one day, but I can give it some months. I could even give it some years. But Nosferatu 1922, it's more of a comfort movie. It's something nice and easy that you could just throw on like a Friday night or something. Get a little bowl of popcorn as you stretch out on my couch. That I've done that before. It's a really nice experience. I recommend that you do that as well. Nosferatu as an IP, no matter how it's been interpreted in the past, because Nosferatu 2024, it's not the only time Nosferatu has been remade, mind you. The whole package is not the most accessible. Just based on its very gothic nature, the pacing, those are just the inherent traits of what makes Nosferatu Nosferatu, no matter which movie you're watching. 1922, I think the 1970s version was it? And then the 2024 one. No matter which way you go, there's going to be certain concepts that are very different from the typical horror fare. The way I see it, none of the movies are bad. None of them are better than the other, worse than the other. It just really comes down to what you prefer to see in a telling of the Nosferatu story. Personally, for me, I think the first one's not a perfect movie necessarily, but a perfect viewing experience if you just want that atmosphere and all of that. But then again, maybe you prefer the 2024 one a little bit more because you got Eggers this time, and he's doing his Eggers thing with it. If you've seen The Witch or any of his other movies, Lighthouse, I haven't seen Lighthouse personally, but if you've seen any of his other movies, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you can't go wrong. They're all good. They all do something different. They all do something new. So yeah, I'm really happy that we have this new film. I don't agree with every single thing that it does, but I'm glad that it's here. I'm glad that we can analyze it. It just adds to the mythos. It doesn't hurt Orlok or Nosferatu in any way. It just gives you more ideas. And that's what a remake should do. So, yeah, overall, really good stuff. Highly recommend it. Check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Enjoy.